Okay, it's 7 o'clock on this March 22nd, 2021, and I will call to order this regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission. And I think we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Chris, you can take the roll.
Okay, and as we do now with the virtual meetings, I need each commissioner to state their city, county, and state where they're presently located. Commissioner Tolis.
City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Ronan.
City of Mount Pleasant, County of Isabella, and State of Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Simon.
City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Alsager.
Isabella County, City of Mount Pleasant, State of Michigan.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
City of Mount Pleasant, the County of Isabella, and State of Michigan.
Thank you. And Mayor Joseph.
City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, and the State of Michigan.
All are present and accounted for except for Commissioner Gillis, who is absent.
Okay. Tonight we do not have any proclamations or presentations. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? All right, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads and no hands. And so we can move on to the public input on agenda items. This is the time for the public to comment on things that are on the agenda tonight. And if you're with us by Zoom, you can go to the bottom of your screen and hit the raise hand button, and I can recognize you. If you're joining us by phone, you can hit *9 on your telephone, and that will do the same. I just ask that you state your name and your address for the record. Manager Ridley, did we have any emailed comments on agenda items tonight?
No, we don't have any yet, Mayor.
Good. All right. I don't see any hands up in the attendees, and it looks like mostly staff members. So I will close the public comment section here for the agenda items, and the public does have a chance to later comment on our public hearing tonight, as well as towards the end of our meeting on any city related issues. And that, Manager Ridley, I'll hand it over to you for a receipt of petitions and communications.
You just have 3 items in this section of the agenda tonight: the report on pending items, the February minutes of the Planning Commission, and then actually it's the November minutes of the Downtown Development Authority. The agenda incorrectly indicated March, but those are actually the minutes from November of 2020 that are in your packet.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Next is the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are on the agenda with an asterisk next to them. And I will note that item number 17, the approval of payrolls and warrants, I would move if that be added to the consent calendar unless there is an objection. No objection is noted. And so I'll open up the floor for any other items that maybe need to be removed from the consent calendar this evening. Okay, I don't see any hands, and so I'll hand it over to Manager Ridley to give an overview of the consent calendar items tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is we have 3 sets of minutes for you to approve. You guys have been busy this month already. We have the minutes of your special meetings of both March 2nd and March 4th, And I would note for the public that we sent out a revised version of the March 4th minutes to the city commissioners that is different than what is in the packet in only two instances. One is we had an incorrect planning commissioner mentioned as being present, and we had not included the information about the physical location of each of the members. So we made those two corrections and sent out revised minutes to all of the city commissioners. So you would have those available. And then you have the minutes of your regular meeting of March 8th. Under the bids and quotes, we're suggesting 4 bids for your approval this evening. The first one is for the replacement of 2 of our police patrol vehicles, and 3 bids were received for that. And upon applying the local preference section of our purchasing ordinance or our purchasing policy, we're recommending the purchase from Crapo Ford for 2 vehicles at a price of $75,886, which is within the budgeted amount. The second bid is for the reconstruction of Gaylord Street between Fancher and Mission, which is planned for this summer. And in this project, during the design phase, we determined that some of the storm sewer in that area should be upgraded at the same time as the street reconstruction, so we don't have to tear it back up again. And that storm sewer improvement was also confirmed in the first draft of the multi-jurisdictional stormwater study we received as something that should be done in the near term. So because of that, the project ended up coming in over budget. And I should mention that this project also includes installation of sidewalk between Fancher and Kinney on that street, which was part of the approved budget. So we're recommending award of the bid to the Isabella Corporation for $339,533 and the appropriate budget amendment of $74,530 from the street funds to cover that additional storm sewer work. The third bid is for the annual preventative maintenance we do of our streets through the crack sealing program. And we had numerous bidders for this project, and the low bid was under budget. So we're recommending that we award the bid to K&B Asphalt Seal Coating for the full amount of the budgeted amount of $50,000 to do some additional preventative work this year. And then the last bid is for our annual sidewalk replacement project. And this is to replace projects throughout or sidewalks throughout the city that are in need of repair. And as part of this bid process, we also included an alternate with the bid, which would be the installation of new sidewalk for a gap that exists on Preston Street right by the railroad tracks. And this gap was originally recommended to us by CMU to consider, and staff concurred that that would be a good gap to fill in. And so since that we've received the bid, CMU has committed to contribute $10,000 towards the construction of that gap. So we're recommending that we award the bid to the Isabella Corporation for $117,207 with the appropriate budget amendment. And based on the contribution from CMU, the net increased cost to the city for both the replacement sidewalks and that gap is $16,310 over the budgeted amount. The next item we have on the consent calendar is to already talk about purchasing making our commitment for salt purchases for next winter season. I'm hopeful to think that this winter may be over based on the nice weather we've had, but we do live in Michigan, so I'm sure we will still continue to use some more salt this season. But through the Michigan My Deal program, we have to commit early for those potential salt purchases, as you know. So we're recommending that you approve the commitment of up to 500 tons for next year as a seasonal backup for our streets. Then we're asking you to set 2 public hearings this evening for your next meeting of April 12th. The first one is on a rezoning request, and this request would rezone 2 properties on South University, which is just north of where the malt shop used to be, for those of you who are around when the malt shop was open. And the public hearing would be on rezoning those 2 properties from CD3 to CD4. And this rezoning is being requested, so the property owner would look at doing demolition of the 2 existing buildings on those lots and would instead construct a new triplex on each of the 2 lots. And the second public hearing is for a text change. And this text change would allow for additional uses in industrial districts that would include dance, art, and music studios. Health and fitness studios are currently involved or allowed in the industrial areas, and this would expand it to include dance, art, and music, which often have similar building design characteristics. So both of those would just be public hearings for April 12th. And then the last item on the consent calendar, as the mayor indicated, would be the approval of payrolls and warrants.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Recognize Commissioner Tolis.
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, and Commissioner Alsager.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar as presented. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Tolis, your hand is up.
I had one question for Manager Ridley. That extra 16,000 at the crossing, is that the total to add that extra sidewalk there?
No, the actual amount for the sidewalk, let me get to it, Commissioner Tolis. The actual cost for this sidewalk is $18,626. And of that, CMU will cover 10,000 of it. We would cover the other 8,000, and plus there's a little bit more needed for the other replacements that were planned. So that's how you get to the budget, the net budget amendment from the city coffers of $16,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any other hands up, and so at this time, I think we can vote on approving the consent calendar as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes,
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Simon,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Next on our agenda is our public hearing. We have one public hearing for this evening, and this is on an ordinance to amend sections 154.203.f and 154.410.b and table 154.410.a of the Mount Pleasant zoning ordinance to permit residential/dwelling uses under certain circumstances and to consider approval of the same. Manager Ridley, would you like to give a brief overview before I open the public hearing?
Yeah, that was a mouthful on your part. I'm glad you had to do that part instead of me. So you may recall that this matter originated as a recommendation in the report that was provided to the commission on the housing study that we completed in 2019. And some of those items from that housing study were referred to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation. So this ordinance amendment is one of those. And if approved, what this would allow is for residential dwellings to be placed on the ground floor in certain circumstances, both limited by location in the city, that being in the downtown areas and the south part of Mission Street, and it would not be on the street side of the building. And so what this ordinance amendment would do is it would provide an opportunity for expanded mixed uses in some of those buildings. And the Planning Commission has unanimously recommended this text change to you for consideration. So after holding the public hearing, we recommend you approve the ordinance as presented. And we do have City Planner Jacob Kane on the call tonight if you have any specific questions for him.
Okay, thank you, Manager Ridley, and thank you, Mr. Kane, for being with us tonight. At this time, I will open up the public hearing for the public. Just like before, you can hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or *9 on your telephone. And I just ask that you state your name and your address for the record. Manager Ridley, did we have any email comments specifically to the public hearing?
No, Mayor, we don't have any.
Okay. I don't see any hands up in our attendees. And so at this time, I will close the public hearing on the ordinance amendments and open up for the floor for a motion and discussion. Commissioner Elsager. Mary, you're muted. Can't hear you.
I move to accept the ordinance as presented.
Okay. And then you mean all three? All three amendments, I suppose?
Yes.
I'll second
Unless you want me to read through all the numbers.
No, that's okay. Commissioner Ronan.
I'm just seconding it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion amongst the board? Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I mean, I read through it, to be honest, and I can tell you this isn't my area, but I mean, is there a downside to this? I can't think of one. I mean, is there some downside to moving in this direction that we're missing? Or Jacob, is there? I mean, it seems like straightforward to me. So
I think Jacob can probably best answer that for us.
Sure, and I apologize, Commissioner Ronan, if I missed any part of your question. When I was getting brought into the meeting, I caught just the first half of your comment. But in terms of downsides, I would hope not. I think the intention of the way the language is drafted is to ensure that this is not detrimental to commercial districts, which is why there's some continued limitation on the location of the residential units. But otherwise, I think this would add flexibility for property owners and also create an opportunity for more people to live in our commercial districts, which should also help our businesses. So
thank you. Nicely done.
Commissioner Toles.
Yeah, Jacob, got one question. The fire suppression for the second story, would that be required on the first story?
generally, if there's a residential unit with a non-residential use, then suppression is required in that building. I don't know if there's possibly, if this is a one-story building situation, a firewall may be able to accomplish the fire code requirement on its own. But I would think that if there are existing residential units in the building upstairs, then this would probably trigger a fire suppression requirement.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a good idea. We're not going to be taking up frontage on the front. And there's a lot of the buildings down there that have dead space in the back that this could be utilized for. Good idea.
Yeah, I would also echo some of those comments. I think that it gives more flexibility to the building owner and to, for our downtown to utilize our space. I don't see any hands up, and so at this time, I do think it's appropriate for us to vote on the ordinance amendments, and I don't think I'll read through them all, but the ordinance amendments as presented tonight. So,
Okay. Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Toles,
Yes.
Commissioner Simon,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay. All right, so that concludes that item. Next is item number 10, which is to prioritize and approve submission of city requests for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% allocations. I know that although Commissioner Gillis could not be with us tonight, she did give her preferences to Manager Ridley, so she will read those tonight. Hand it over to you guys.
Mayor, did you want me to start with Commissioner Gillis's top 5?
Yeah, sure, that works.
The ones that Commissioner Gillis is submitting as her top 5 priority include the aerial fire apparatus, which is a total of $450,000 project. That's a high priority. The second one is the lime residual removal, which is a $150,000 project with a high priority. The septage receiving, a $140,000 project with a high priority. The clarifier rehabilitation, $90,000 project with a high priority. And the 800 megahertz radios at $46,412 as a high priority.
Vice Mayor Perchbacher.
My 5 are the Peak program, the outdoor dining district Broadway Street, the airport operational funding, which I understand is a reoccurring. So that's something that we usually try to do. Laboratory upgrade and the SCADA. Okay, software.
I'll go next. The top 5 that I chose in really no particular order were the Peak program, the airport operations, the SCADA software, the makeup air for the water. I'm going to botch this name, but the water resource. The wastewater plant. And the Riverwalk pedestrian bridge. Commissioner Alsager?
Well, so far I'm just batting 2 for 5 for everyone who's gone, but maybe Olivia and I might agree more, Pete and I might agree more. Under community services, I chose the Peak program and the Island Park pickleball courts, near and dear to my heart. And then under public safety, I chose the aerial fire apparatus. And then for public works, chose the airport operational funding and the lime residual removal. Those are my 5.
Who wants to go next? Commissioner Toles?
For my 5, I have the aerial fire apparatus as number 1. Number 2, airport operational funding. Number 3, clarifier rehab. Number 4, lime residual removal. And number 5, runway taxiway rehab.
All right, I think we just have Commissioner Ronan and Commissioner Simon left. So whoever is ready. Commissioner Simon?
Okay, so I have the Peak program. How do they have an outdoor dining district? Airport operations. See the makeup air replacement, and then SCADA. Okay.
And we will finish with Commissioner Ronan.
I had Peak, the airport operation funding, laboratory upgrade, the air unit replacement, and outdoor dining.
Okay, commissioners, what we will do is we'll accumulate those and send a listing of those top 5 that had the most interest from you to the tribal council members, so they have that in front of them when they're making their decisions. And I will also send a copy of that letter to each of you so that you know what ended up getting submitted based on what we heard this evening.
All right. Thank you. Next is item number 13, which is to consider policy changes and resolution for the community development block grant funded projects. And there are 3 different items here. And so per staff's recommendation, we'll take one at a time. The first being to consider rescinding the Central Business District Fair Housing Policy. And I will hand it over to Manager Ridley for a brief overview.
Yeah, and I'll start out with the general overview of why we're doing this. We've been reviewing our policies and procedures to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the current community development block grant requirements, because we are often audited against those whenever we have a grant or a loan through that program. So we regularly do a review of them. Many of the changes can be handled administratively to make sure we're in compliance, but there are 3 before you this evening that require City Commission action. And as the mayor indicated, we're asking you to vote on them individually, but to save some time, I will make my comments on all 3 of them so you don't have to keep coming back to me. And the first one, we're asking you to rescind the fair housing policy that the City Commission approved in 2015. And the only reason we're asking this to be rescinded is as we looked closer at our human rights ordinance that is on the books, the provisions in our human rights ordinance adequately address everything that was in that fair housing policy. So it didn't make sense to have the duplicative policies. So we're recommending that that be rescinded and we rely on our human rights ordinance. The second change that we're recommending is an update to the economic opportunity policy, which is required for CDBG funds. And this policy generally applies to when we have to bid or contract for projects. And the provisions in this policy would only apply to those projects that are funded with CDBG funds. So we would have it on the books for those types of projects. And then lastly is a resolution that we need to have on the books that would define slum and blight consistent with how CDBG standards are used for those types of activities. And again, that would only come into play if we were applying for a grant that would address such activity in a specified section of the city. So those are the 3 changes we're asking you to consider this evening.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. The first one we will consider rescinding the Central Business District Fair Housing Policy. And I do see Commissioner Simon, you have your hand up, but I'm not sure if that's from previously.
That's old, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. But I will look for a motion on that item from Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I move that we accept the city's recommendation for the first item, item A.
And Commissioner Alsager.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to rescind the Central Business District Fair Housing Policy. Open up for discussion. I would note that we do have a human rights ordinance that covers some of the things that were covered in that policy. And in my experience, an ordinance has a little more power than a policy. So Commissioner Alsager.
I just had one question, that if I was coming into this city and looking for that information, would it be hidden in some book? Would it be easier if we kept it in an easy to spot location in our policies?
Actually, that's a great question, Commissioner Alsager, but I would submit to you that finding something in the ordinances is actually easier than finding something in a policy, because the ordinances are online and they are word searchable. So it's much easier to find something in the ordinances than it is in our policies.
Yeah, I think that's the word I was looking for.
Commissioner Tolis?
Yeah, Manager Ridley, can you tell me this human rights ordinance, when that was implemented, please?
I don't know off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I want to say it was 2015, but I might be incorrect.
2012.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none, I believe we can vote on the motion to rescind the Central Business District Fair Housing Policy.
Okay. Commissioner Simon?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Tolis?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, so that the motion to rescind the Central Business District Fair Housing Policy has passed. Next is item B, which is to consider amendment to the Economic Opportunity Policy for Section 3 covered contracts. And I'll look to the commission for a motion on this item. Commissioner Tolis?
I'll make a motion to amend the economic opportunity policy for Section 3 covering contracts, please.
And Commissioner Alsager?
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the economic opportunity policy for Section 3 covered contracts. Any discussion? Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this simply applies to those block grants, right? So everything within there it's probably required to get the block grant, right? So
Exactly. You're exactly right.
I have no,
Okay. Without any other hands up for discussion, I think we can vote on the motion to amend the economic opportunity policy for Section 3 covered contracts.
Okay. Commissioner Alsager?
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan?
yes.
Commissioner Simon?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
And that passes 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. The motion has passed. For item C, which is to consider a resolution defining slum and blighted, look for a motion from the commission. Commissioner Alsager?
I move to approve the resolution defining slum and blighted areas for CDBG activities as presented.
And Commissioner Tolis?
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to support the resolution defining slum and blighted according to CDBG definition. Any discussion? Okay, I think we can vote on the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis?
Yes.
Commissioner Simon?
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Yes.
And Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
All right. Item number 14 is to consider an agreement for annexation and detachment of property with the Charter Township of Union. And I will hand this over to Manager Ridley for overview.
Yes, during our preparation for the 2020 census, it was identified that a section of our northern boundary was not consistent in our mapping between the city records, the township records, and the State Boundary Commission. And so Jacob Kane, our city planner, took it upon himself to clean this up so that we don't have to deal with it again when we prepare for the 2030 census, which will be here before we know it. And quite frankly, this agreement looks more confusing than it really is. Because really what we're doing is we're merely making some adjustments to make sure that the city's records, the township records, and the boundary commission records all have the same boundary line about where the city ends and where the township begins. And the area that we're talking about is near the city's DPW building and near the cemetery that's owned by the Saginaw Diocese. And it also covers a small piece of land owned by the country club and a small piece of land that's part of a 425 agreement with the township. So the agreement that's provided to you tonight for consideration was prepared by the city attorney, and it was done in consultation with both city staff and township staff to help clarify that boundary. No one lives on the parcels that are being impacted by that boundary clarification. And most of the properties are actually non-taxable properties, other than 2 of them. And one is already covered by a 425 agreement. And the other one is a very small piece of land owned by the country club, which actually would go from city jurisdiction to township jurisdiction. And the property owners have all are aware of this, that this is being recommended and why we're recommending the cleanup, and they are familiar with what is trying to be accomplished. So even though it looks confusing, it's really much more straightforward than what it would appear. So the township board will be considering this at their meeting on Wednesday night, and the township staff will be recommending the same agreement. So we're recommending that you approve the agreement, or you authorize the mayor to sign the agreement as presented. And once that is done and the township also approves it, then all 3 jurisdictions can clean up our boundary maps so that we don't run into this issue again.
Thank you, Manager Ridley, and I'll recognize Commissioner Toles.
I'll move to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement related to clarifying of the boundaries as presented, please.
And Commissioner Elsager?
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement related to clarification of the boundary as presented. Any discussion? I see Commissioner Toles' hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it put back down.
Oh, that's okay. Commissioner Ronan. George, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. You're muted.
What I didn't get, and maybe it was in there and I just missed it, but you know, when you blow the map up this size, it looks like a huge parcel of land.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of how much we're actually talking about in terms of acreage, or?
I don't know off the top of my head. I just promoted Jacob back into the meeting to see if he knows that from an acreage standpoint.
And I'm not asking for an exact, just a sense of it.
Sure. I believe the Public Works compound site is about 40 acres, I think, and that's the bulk of the property that's involved.
Okay. So it is a big chunk of property. I mean, it's a.
But the other pieces are much smaller than that, right, Jacob? Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably 80% of the total area. So we're probably talking somewhere in the 45 to 50 acre range.
Any chance that we could take the rest of the township property?
I don't think it's necessary for us to.
All right. Well, I don't see any other hands up for discussion. I would note that hopefully this agreement is met as warmly as I think it is being here. And so I believe we can vote on the motion to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement related to clarification of the boundary as presented with Union Township.
Okay. Commissioner Simon,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Toles,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Next is item number 15, which is to consider the acceptance of $30,000 from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, or MISTA, for a neighborhood enhancement grant, and to authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents and approve the allocation of additional funds. I think I saw that Mr. Lobsinger is with us tonight, and so, but I will hand this over to Manager Ridley for overview.
Yes, we wanted to take an opportunity, since this was on the agenda, to give you information about the success of last year's program. And so Mr. Lobsinger and his committee provided a report for you on the 10 properties which were part of the 2020 MISTA grant that was received, and the city funds that were put toward that project. And you will note from that summary that all of those projects are complete except for 3 of them, which are almost done but not quite complete due to COVID-related delays. And overall, it was felt that the program had a positive impact not only on the properties that the 10 properties that participated, but also on the neighboring properties, and overall felt the program was quite a success. So we were happy to find out that we also received notification from the state that we've been awarded another $30,000 for this year to continue the program. And so we're recommending tonight that you go ahead and authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate agreements with the state to accept the $30,000. We've also recommended that we allocate another $60,000 of city matching funds from the hodag fund for this project, like we did last time. And it would be split in the same way as we did last time, that $30,000 would be toward the West Side neighborhood, which is where the grant money also goes. And then $30,000 would be available citywide. The parameters of the program are essentially the same as they were last year because it was a successful program. There's only two changes really recommended to the parameters. And one would be to cap the maximum funding at $10,000 instead of $15,000. And as you look at our projects from last year, that's right in the range of most of what we funded anyway, so that we could impact as many properties as possible. But the second change that we're also asking you to consider is that we have an owner contribution that would be equal to 25% of the portion of any project that is greater than $7,500, but less than $10,000. So in a quote unquote worst case scenario, if we had a $10,000 project, the owner contribution would only be $625. So they would receive $10,000 of improvement to their property, but they would have to contribute only $625 toward that. And both of those changes, the change in the cap and that small contribution for those higher cost projects, are merely to stretch the funds a bit further so that we can impact more properties. And also it would allow us to eliminate what the prior program had about placing liens on the property for a certain period of time. And so this would eliminate those liens because the property owner would have some investment into the project instead of having to go through the complicated lien process and having to track that over 5 years. So that is our recommendation of the only changes to the parameters of the program. So what we're asking you to do tonight is authorize the mayor to sign the grant agreements, allocate $60,000 of funds, and then confirm the parameters as they're presented.
Okay, thank you, Manager Ridley. Commissioner Tolis?
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate MISTA documents for the acceptance of the $30,000 Neighborhood Enhancement Program grant and approve the allocation of the $60,000 of the hodag fund and endorse the program parameters as presented tonight.
Okay, and Commissioner Elsager?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate MISTA documents for the acceptance of the $30,000 Neighborhood Enhancement Program grant and approve the allocation of $60,000 of hodag funds and to endorse the program parameters as presented. Commissioner Toles?
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm sorry. Commissioner Elsager?
I just had a question for Mr. Lobsinger. When I read through it, it looked like there were lots of applicants and they ended up with a lottery system. And I wonder if he could explain that a little bit.
I just moved Doug into the meeting, so Mr. Lobsinger, you can go ahead and answer that if you can hear us. There he is.
Yeah, I missed the first part of that question when you moved me over.
Oh, hello there. No, just
Good evening.
I framed it by saying as I read through the documents, it looked like we had many applicants and, had a good success for what happened. And it also looked like you had a lottery type system. And I just wondered how that occurred.
Yes, we did have a really good response. We had 35 people on the west side neighborhood, and we had like 37 in the citywide section of the grant. And so there's a lot of interest in that. And what we do is we use a computer program to arrange those by a number, and each application has a number written on it beforehand. That way it's a fair process to get selected. Now we do have a little bit of ability to rearrange those so that we use all the funds. If somebody's got a $10,000 project and we only have $6,000 left, then we have to go to that list and find somebody that can fit in there to use that $6,000. If that answers your questions.
Sure, it does. Thank you.
And Doug, I would presume that properties who were not selected last year will have the ability to reapply again this year?
Absolutely. We thought we would send a letter out to them because we have their emails. We've corresponded back and forth through the year. So we thought we'd send out an invitation to apply again.
Commissioner Toles?
Thank you, Mr. Lobsinger, for the great job you did on this program, getting it up and carrying it forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. The program is obviously been very successful and very popular. Will people who received monies this last year, will they be able to apply again for a project, or is there a sort of like you have to wait?
There's no restrictions for MISTA to do that. So we've been following the same program guidelines that we designed for that. Really a question we haven't had brought up, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah. I guess a second question I had is there's about $9,000 left over from the previous allocation. And I was planning to sort of pose the question, but I was wondering first, is it possible to roll over those dollars into this year's program? Or if we don't know the specific number of dollars and we want to make it neat, would it be more convenient to say, hey, we're going to allocate, instead of the $60,000 from hodag, maybe $70,000 if we wanted to round up?
Mayor, that's a good question. We had, because they've been allocated to the program, we had assumed that whatever was unused would automatically roll over to this year. And so I don't think it's necessary to increase your allocation, because we'll have firm numbers before we start making these awards for this year. So I think we'll be covered with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that we're contributing that money as we intended from last year. Mary, did we answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. If I remember last year, there was some sense that they had to hang on to the property for a minimum number of years. Is that still in place? Will that still be in place with these changes, these procedural changes?
That was in place, Commissioner Ronan, only for the higher dollar projects, the ones over $7,500. And that's what I was referring to, the liens that were attached to the property. And so they were required to hold on to the property for 5 years if they had a higher cost project. But the ones under $7,500 did not have that requirement to continue to hold on to it. So that's the part we're recommending be changed, is that because they'll have some cash into the project for those higher cost ones, we wouldn't do the liens any longer.
So they'd be able to turn that over in a shorter period of time if they want.
Right.
I guess Commissioner Alsager.
I did remember what I wanted to ask before. I mostly wanted to tell Mr. Lobsinger that when I saw the addresses in our packet, that I rode my bike today and I went past them, and I saw one on the west side that has a beautiful new purple roof. It was beautiful. And then I saw another one that the man was outside, and I just said, "Hey, I saw you got one of those grants. You know, what did you have done?" And he was very proud to show me his roof. He said it was very needed. It was in very bad shape. So I think we have some good successes.
Yeah. We definitely made a difference in a lot of people's ability to fix their home up a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up for discussion or comments, questions. So at this time, I believe we can vote on the motion to authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate MISTA documents. Excuse me. For the acceptance of the $30,000 neighborhood enhancement program grant and approve the allocation of the $60,000 of hodag funds and endorse the program parameters as presented. Excuse me.
Okay, Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Simon,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is item number 16, which is to consider the resolution extending conditional approval of a Class A medical marijuana grow operation for MI Operations LLC. And I'll hand this over to Manager Ridley for a brief overview.
Yes, on Tuesday of last week, we received this written request that is in your packet from MI Operations LLC, and they currently hold a conditional medical marijuana Class A grow operation license for the city, and they have certain milestones in the ordinance that they have to meet in order to get to final license approval. And they have requested an extension of one of those milestones, and it's the milestone of applying to the state for a site-specific license for that facility. And this is the first time we've run into this with a medical license, but they've indicated that what they would like to do is have an extension of that time period to apply to the state so that they can complete some renovations at the site before they complete the application and have the inspection done. So they've requested a 9-month extension of that ability to apply for that state site-specific license. They would still be limited under the ordinance to a total of 18 months to get to final authorization for their license. So at the end of the day, the end date of when they have to have all of their work done does not change. It just gives them an additional time period to do this one step in the process. And so what we have provided for you in the packet, if you're interested in that, is a resolution that would provide for that extension. So that would give them until December 11th, which is the 9 months that they've requested. I should have mentioned that the medical marijuana ordinance does give the commission authority to extend those deadlines for showing of good cause. And that's the extent of the parameters that you have to work within. Is if you think the request is for good cause, you have the ability to do it. But again, I think it's important to note on this one, the end deadline of getting to final authorization is not being requested to change. It's only one of those interim steps that they're asking for additional time period on. So we've drafted the resolution for your consideration if you're willing to consider such request.
Okay, thank you, Manager Ridley. Commissioner Alsager.
I move to approve the resolution extending conditional authorization for MI Operations LLC medical marijuana Class A grower license at 1110 North Fancher as presented.
Okay. And Commissioner Toles.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support to approve the resolution extending conditional authorization for Michigan Operation LLC medical marijuana Class A grower license at 1110 North Fancher. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Toles, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Mayor. I have quite a few industrial properties in this area and my main warehouse in this area. I noticed that the owners were viciously moving out of there this morning. Had about 3 or 4 trucks there moving their equipment from that auto center. And I think this would be a showing of good cause because I know this building. I viewed the building when it was up for sale before. I think they need to do a lot of upgrades, which I eventually think they're going to do. And I think this is going to be good to get this done in that area. So I'm thinking this is a showing of good cause. It would qualify under that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. I'd like to note that I think if we decided not to approve this resolution, that the applicant would just have to reapply. And right now I don't think it's a very competitive license right now, that we have more licenses available than there are applicants. And so really this is more of I wouldn't say a formality, but this is really sort of us just making it easier. They would have to repay maybe an application fee and they'd still move forward with the project. The Planning Commission did approve their special use permit earlier this month. And I believe that's good for a year. So.
Mayor, if I may, you asked me a question that I totally forgot to follow up on until I heard you talking again. Your question was, if they did reapply, would they also have to reapply for the special use permit? And I forgot to ask that question. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to move Jacob into the meeting so that he can answer that question to see if a reapplication would require another special use permit process. So Jacob, I apologize for putting you on the spot because I did have that question ahead of time and forgot to pass it on to you.
And Mr. Mayor, there's 2 things. The special use permit runs with the property and it remains active for a year after approval. So they would not need to reapply for that. And I just wanted to clarify, you are correct that the applicant could, if the conditional authorization expires or they were to withdraw it, they could reapply. However, they would start a new 30-day clock for the phase 2 submittal to the state, and they're asking for 9 months of extension. So they essentially end up in the same spot they're currently in, just pushing that expiration date out another 30 days. And so this extension really is necessary to give them the time they're requesting to upgrade the building and be at a point where the state is able and willing to inspect.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Commissioner Toles, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, that was for me.
All All right, well, it's quite a bunch. I believe we can vote on the motion to approve the resolution extending conditional authorization for MI Operations LLC medical marijuana Class A grower license at 1110 North Fancher.
Okay, Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Simon,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay, great. Next on the agenda is announcements on city-related issues and new business. Commissioner Ronan. George, unfortunately, you're muted.
Yeah, it's just been a long day. Could we go back to item 15 for a minute? Is that possible?
Did you want to discuss item number 15? Or did you want to make?
Very briefly. Yeah. This is what I want to find out about, right? And I should have brought it up then. It's just the people who we put a lien on their property, can they pay that amount of money and get that lien off? Can they go by the change in ordinance or the change in what we just proposed? I meant to ask that. I apologize. You know how we've just changed the priorities for the program. Is there any way that can apply to them, or is that inappropriate to raise right now?
I think that's something, Commissioner, we would have to look into and report back to you, because we would be changing that requirement retroactively. So let us do some research into it, and I will get back to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry for derailing us. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tolis.
In answer to Commissioner Ronan's question, I think, George, the reason that lien was put in there was to stop people from taking your money, putting it into it, and then turning it and reselling it within a couple of years. That was to stop that from being implemented.
Okay. Commissioner Alsager.
Just a point of something I was reading was talking about something that Jacob will be glad that other communities are talking about as well, about changing types of housing ordinances and things like that, that we're not the only ones that have that ahead of us or are looking at that. I guess the Ann Arbor's City Commission is toiling along with that this week as well.
Great. I had a couple things that I wanted to bring up tonight. The first, a few weeks ago, was actually right before our last meeting, and I meant to bring it up at our last meeting, but I got a little bit sidetracked. A dear friend of mine, and I think a long-term community member, Matt Mertz, passed away. Matt was a dedicated community member to supporting, voting rights and a lot of issues that concern the community, especially those that concerned our younger community members and college students. I remember when I first started getting involved, Matt reached out to me about running for the city commission, and during the time that I got to know Matt, he was often writing editorials for CM Life, Morning Sun, and coming to a lot of public forums and meetings. And so it was very sad to see that he passed. And I just wanted to sort of take a moment to, recognize Matt Mertz in his contributions to the community, and he will be greatly missed. The second thing I wanted to bring up was a little more lighthearted. I got a letter in the mail, and I got this postcard, and I'll kind of put it up on the screen so you can kind of see it. What that is Broadway Street looking west. And that is, according to the postcard, is from, where's the date? I had a date. I think it was in the 1950s somewhere, and it's obviously not a picture, it's a painting, but it's oh no, it's from 1938. That's Broadway Street from 1938. And I just wanted to show that again. It's a little bit glossy on the screen, so it might be hard to make out, but I thought it was really cool. You can kind of see there's an old like grain mill in the back, and you can definitely recognize some of the architecture on top of the buildings that's still present on Broadway Street. And this was actually sent by a guy who turns out he's kind of famous. His name is Lowell Yorg, and he sends postcards to communities all across the country. He's been doing this for like decades, and I just wanted to read his letter to the commission, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. It says, Honorable Mayor of Mount Pleasant, good morning. I was at an antique store some time ago and found this circa 1938 picture card showing your beautiful area. I figure you might enjoy seeing it. At any rate, I hope it brightens your day. I'm thinking 2021 is going to be a better year. The card itself is an old-time classic. I said to myself, by golly, I think I'll send it home where it can be appreciated. Heritage is important to all of us. Enlarged and posted up, it will create some nice conversation. Well, I gave $6 for it, so if you want it for $7 or $8 or so, that would be nice. Throw in a little postage if you want to. And sure, I like souvenirs. My wife used to laugh at me and say, if you hear from them, you'll have to take me to lunch. I'm 92 years old and I'm still going strong as far as I know. I call my little hobby a redistribution of happiness. Our world sure needs it. And I wish you and your staff a happy and productive year. Lowell Yorg, Oaks Assisted Living, 6725 Inglewood Avenue. It says, P.S. Oh yes, my daughter says you can find me on Google, but I never look. P.S. Do not despair. Spring will come, which is very fitting because we just started spring. And I
guess here.
He's very famous. So,
Mayor, we do have some City of Mount Pleasant souvenirs that we keep on hand for certain visitors that come to our community. So I'm sure we could send something to him so that he has to take his wife out to lunch.
that's right.
Along with the $7.
Yes.
Yes, and this, yeah, I'll cover the $7. I'd be happy to.
I'll split it with you.
Yeah. And then, as always, just like to remind the community that during this past year, we've had record-breaking need in our community and really in the nation. And so, if you have the time or maybe a little extra money to spare, our homeless shelter, our food bank, Clothing Inc., they can certainly use your help. And our community members really need your help. Is really who you're helping. So, with that, turn it over to anyone else who has announcements or anything else. Okay, well, at this time, I'll open up our public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. And if you're with us by Zoom, you can hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or *9 by telephone. And state your name and your address for the record. Manager Ridley, did we have any emailed comments?
We still don't, Mayor.
Okay. Right. I don't see any hands up, and so I will close this public comment section on agenda and non-agenda items. Tonight we do have a work session on closure ideas for Broadway Street from Main to University. And so we'll take a recess for about 5 minutes and we'll reconvene for that discussion.
things up. No, it's probably gonna be a half an hour. We got a work session.
Okay. Okay, it looks like we have all our commissioners back, and so we will resume our meeting. Tonight, obviously, we're going to talk about the closure ideas for Broadway Street from Main to University. As everyone recalls, we did this last year to sort of respond to the limitations that were put on businesses because of the pandemic. And then we have a memo prepared from Downtown Development Director Michelle Sponseller on some, some options that we can implement and what their costs are. And so really tonight we'll be looking for the commission's sort of nod that they're interested in some of these items or not, to prepare a budget amendment for our next meeting. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Nancy or Michelle, kind of introduce us.
I think you did a great introduction, Mayor. The only additional thing I would add is the memo that we provided is really in three categories. One is a general overview, which is more the administrative types of things that we did to make that project work, and some of the things we will do this year. And probably the thing that would be helpful if you had any input in that section would be if you had any concerns about the tentative dates that we have proposed. But the rest of that, I'm not sure is worth a whole lot of discussion this evening. We're more so interested in your feedback on the second two sections. And the second one is about the appearance, some things we could do to try to make the area more attractive to the individuals who utilize the area. And then the third section is some activities we might be able to have, but that section is obviously dependent on the health orders, because with the current restrictions on some of those health orders, many of those activities could not currently take place, but we wanted to be poised so that if they do change, we would be able to maybe offer some of those activities as the summer goes on. So we're interested in your feedback on any thoughts you have on those potential activities. So if maybe we could approach it from those three standpoints: dates, appearance, and activity, that might keep our conversation fairly structured.
Okay, I like that idea. Well, I will open up the floor for, first, I guess we'll start with sort of the general overview, the dates, the ADA spaces, the loading and unloading for Isabella Bank, trash, QR codes for the restaurants, and the barricades, picnic tables. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I
George?
just wanted to say how thrilled I was. I mean, I don't, I'm not I'm not sophisticated enough to try to micromanage this. I mean, it's not something I do, but I was really pleased with the entire package, to be honest. I think it fits in with the mayor's concern about make Mount Pleasant cool, or that whole sort of model, and I think it works well to sort of celebrate the end of the pandemic. And I realize the timing is difficult, but we'll play it as it goes. So I have very little to add, unfortunately. I think it's all.
Okay. Commissioner Alsager?
I just want to echo everything George just said.
Okay. Commissioner Toles? George, or Pete, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. There you go.
Very good. Just want to make a quick couple comments here. I see that City Coffee is building a new deck out in front of their place that looks like it's taking up 2 parking spaces. My thinking is on this: do we really need to close Main from Main to University Street? We worked it before, giving each business an extra couple parking spaces there to put extra tables there, and then we had it barricaded off. Seems to me it'd be less of a restriction to allow traffic to go up and down through there. And meanwhile, you're still utilizing the side parking spaces for these businesses to put picnic tables out there and serve or do whatever they're going to do out there. I think it causes just less of a hassle. I'm thinking, you look at City Coffee, like I said, that street is enclosed going through there. He's got a beautiful deck there now that you can access from the sidewalk and get on that deck. And I'm pretty sure they'll probably put some barricades up around that. I'm thinking it'd be easier just utilize some barricades and do that. That could be something that we could look at.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Tullis, one of the things we found last summer, and Michelle might be able to speak to this better, is that by having it closed down, there was more shared use of the space, so that it wasn't limited to just the property owners that have the patios or the picnic tables in front of them, that sometimes people would pick up something from Jimmy John's and Vintrafeos and Max and Emily's and then meet at a picnic table and eat together. So it allowed people to frequent more of the businesses in the downtown, but yet still congregate in their little group together at that shared space. So that's one advantage of why having that area closed off with the general picnic tables helps out the whole downtown instead of just the ones who do it right outside their business, is one observation I would share.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Yeah, I want to just say that having that area shut down really does create a community space. With some of the things that Michelle had put in the memo of possibly a stage and some areas where people could play checkers or chess, some great street painting. It just creates this this area where people can gather together and not, don't we have a tagline called Meet Here? I mean, isn't that what we're kind of like going for, right? This is a community area. We want people to meet here, to be downtown, to enjoy the space. So I still am very supportive of blocking off that block and adding some other amenities that will bring people downtown, give them a space to be.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Perschbacher. I wanted to ask a question about the dates. This goes through October 17th, and I think everybody knows that the weather starts to get a little bit cold for most people around then. But I did see that some other communities were successful in making spaces that were more geared for the winter. And so I'm not saying that tonight that, maybe we, push to extend it, but I was wondering if at some point, maybe during the summer, we could sort of look at potentially creating a space that's more winter or cold weather themed. And just, even if we can just see what, kind of options that, we can maybe investigate about and what Michelle can come up with as we kind of move down the calendar. Is there any other comments or questions just on the dates and sort of the general overview areas?
Mayor, one other thing I should mention on the dates, that I think that October 17th date, you'll notice we said approximately. We should probably explain the reason we said approximately there is we may need to reevaluate that date depending on homecoming, because typically we have a CMU parade, a high school parade, and a Sacred Heart parade that likes to go through the downtown. And so we're going to have to, if they are able to have homecomings this fall and have parades, we may need to look at, is there a different route to have that parade go? Or should we open this up sooner to accommodate those homecoming activities? So that date is kind of squishy right now until we know a little bit more about that and can evaluate those parade routes possibly. So I wanted to explain why we use the word approximately there.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Manager Ridley. Okay. I guess the next we can sort of look at the appearance items. There's several different items that are sort of included there. Some signage, some trash can liners, the concrete barriers, picnic tables that are painted, and umbrella bases. I'll kind of open it up. You guys see, you guys know the list. Commissioner Elsager.
Thank you. Well, I did want to comment on one thing Nancy just said, but I'm not sure if the high school homecoming dates might be sooner, but I think CMU's is October 17th.
I think so.
That weekend. Anyhow, this is kind of piggybacking on what Amy said, but any of the appearance things, you know, the colorful picnic tables, the things that we need for safety and all that, I think anything we can do is good. I trust Michelle.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, and for me, I'm sort of at this point, I'm sort of an all the above. I really like the Edison lights. I've seen those in use in other communities, notably in Port Huron. Actually, I was there for a night, and it was kind of lit up their downtown in a very nice way, and people really like them. Are there any items that pose a problem for anyone? Or okay, any additional items that we should consider potentially? Commissioner Ronan.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher and I would be happy to have a night where we teach social dance. I don't know, tango, swing, whatever. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Mary could do a night of pickleball or something.
That's the next section.
I don't. I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
So on
Sounds
this
like-
appearance section, are you suggesting that we bring a budget amendment that would implement all of these? Is that what I'm hearing? Or are you looking for us to bring what we think is most important out of that listing?
I'll say I'm all the above. I like them all.
Okay.
But if there's, some disagreement on that, that's what we're here for. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I agree with the mayor, but I wouldn't want to, I mean, it's sort of being experimental, right? We're going to try a few things. We're going to see how they work. I mean, I don't know that I'd want to set out, you can only do these activities or say. So I'm not sure how to proceed, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm focusing on the appearance ones, not the activity,
okay.
the appearance ones first.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor.
Okay. You see that table, George, that's got, the signage, trash cans, it's got the estimated price there for all those things. Commissioner Simon?
Yeah, I have a question. Since I wasn't here last year when this was discussed, what's the difference here from what this looked like last year? I mean, like it says additional picnic tables. Is that 10 more than what we've had before? How many did we have before?
Yeah. Last year we had 20 picnic tables and we borrowed them from the Parks Department and then ended up painting them partway through the season. So under this scenario, we would add 10 additional picnic tables to it. So we'd have a total of 30 throughout the area. And then the barricades that we used last year, Commissioner Simon, were more the types of barricades you would see during a construction project. So they were more the 3-tier ones that had the orange on them. And so this proposal would have something much more painted, like using the concrete barricades that would be painted. And then we did have use of some umbrellas last year on some of the picnic tables, but not all of them had it. We had borrowed umbrellas from different places. And so this would have those umbrellas on all the picnic tables. So last year was pretty bare bones. It was basically 20 picnic tables, construction barricades, and a few umbrellas was the extent of what we did last year. So most of this is improving upon all of those areas.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good question. I think we'll move on to the potential activity section, which starts with the Max and Emily's concerts and sort of moves down through Thrilling Thursdays. This is where we have that chess checkers table and the cornhole tables, the stage, art reach. I had one question about the if we were to do the cornhole tables or the chess/checkers tables, would we be able to move those potentially like into the park if we did, let's say we bought those and then we wanted to add them in the park somewhere at some point?
Michelle, can you answer that question?
I certainly can. We can absolutely move those into the parks if we'd like to afterwards.
But Michelle, what do you do with the like the bags for cornhole and the checkers or chess pieces? How are those stored?
Well, in this case, we would buy the tables or the cornhole. I'm not sure what to call them. The where you toss them, but folks would bring their own checkers in their own bags.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Yes. Yes.
I like that, especially in a pandemic. Probably makes sense.
And they would be difficult to keep track of. Those are smaller items, and they could walk away or get lost very easily. So these are just for the tables and again, I'm not up to speed on cornhole as much as I should be probably, but the what you toss the bags into. But those can certainly be moved into the parks afterwards.
All right. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Simon raised an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. I mean, what did we spend on it last year?
What did we spend last year?
Yeah, for this thing.
All we spent, I think, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, was basically the paint for the tables. Everything else was borrowed last year.
Correct.
Is that correct, Michelle?
It's correct.
So $1,000?
No, it wasn't. I believe it was, I want to say it was $400 and not quite $500 in paint.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like what we're talking about now is about $52,150. Is that what I'm making? I just did a quick look. I mean, it's something like that, right? I mean,
Yeah, that would be the additional amount above and beyond what we already have funded, because we do have the Max and Emily's concert and the Thrilling Thursdays already funded if we're able to have those projects. So you're right, it'd be about $52,000 plus some funds for the installation of the lights. So I don't know what that would run, but it's a little bit north of $52,000 for all of these appearance and activities.
got it. And, I'm in favor, but you know, it doesn't.
Commissioner Simon?
Yeah, I have another question. Would those lights stay up year round, or is that just during the dates for this program?
I would look at it as just while the Broadway closure is taking place. It is something that we could certainly look at, but at this point, I would plan on those being at least turned off, if not taken down at the end.
Okay.
Commissioner Alsager?
Well, I just wanted to go on record as saying, like others have said, I'm full in.
Okay.
That's it.
Commissioner Toles.
Yeah, if I can, I'd like to flip back to the appearance option sheet for a minute and ask a question of where we got the figures for the concrete barricades and the basis numbers for the 10 picnic tables.
Certainly, the concrete barricades, I had reached out to, let me think here. I believe it was Fisher's, and I'm trying to remember the other company that I called, but it was local, and they had quoted me $850. And I'm sorry, it was the second umbrella basis.
Picnic tables, I believe.
Oh, picnic tables, I'm sorry. That was off of a quote that Chris Bundy had put together for me. Those are the same picnic tables as we currently have in our parks.
So the concrete barricades were $850 a piece?
Yes.
God, I'd like to get the contract to sell those to the city.
If I had a form, I could make some concrete and mix it myself, but unfortunately I don't have that skill set.
Well, Michelle, I buy those all day for $75 to $80 a piece.
Well, I will happily take your contacts then.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. So at the end of the packet, it has potential funding options, and is that something we should discuss tonight?
I'm not sure that it's necessary to, Mayor, unless you have strong feelings on one of those. We will certainly be looking to talk to the CBB and or see if there's any sponsorships available. And when we bring the budget amendment to you, we'll bring a recommendation of which of those areas, the general fund or the economic initiatives, we think it should come from. And we would structure it as a not to exceed amount, so that if we are successful in getting some sponsorships or some grants, that it would minimize the amount. I was hopeful that we would know more about the American Recovery Plan or the stimulus package to know if we might be able to use some of the funds for that. But I'm not sure we're going to have enough guidance on the available uses of those funds in order to be able to use it for this activity. So I think when we bring you the budget amendment, we will probably bring it to you as a not to exceed from either the economic initiatives or the general fund, and then look at sponsorships or grants outside of that to cover some of those costs. So I'm not sure we have to spend a lot of time talking about that this evening.
Okay, I did. If my 2 cents is of value, but I did think that the American Recovery Plan or the stimulus money, I thought maybe we should keep that sort of separate, because I feel like that might stimulate conversations not only amongst our board, but some of our community partners about how to best use those funds. And before we really know all the details, probably not best to bank on using those. And I sort of thought the natural place where this might come from is the Economic Initiatives Fund, but that's my 2 cents. And if anyone else have any last comments, questions before we wrap up for tonight? Okay. Well, I just want to thank everybody for a great meeting tonight. Stay safe. The weather's great out there, so enjoy it. And it's 8:39 and we're adjourned.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.